Our next speaker has been with us for a few years, has a huge organization with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of agents, got COVID and almost didn't make it. Like we were praying, dear God, please don't let Chris die tonight. He lost, I think, 80–90% of the use of his lungs, and it was touch and go. I bawled for him over an entire month last September. We are here in January. This was just last September. And he was on oxygen in his own house, and it was bad. And I'll let him share his story. Help me welcome the amazing, the one and only Mr. Chris Okamura, my good friend.
Thank you. Well, hello. I was actually kind of reluctant to come up here and do this speech today. It's been a while since I talked, but funny story real quick, though. Brent talks about how much he's full of energy, and he absolutely abhors negative energy. He's completely honest. Back when I was in Ontario, remember that, Brent? When I ran the Berkshire Hathaway? I used to invite Brent to my market centers all the time to train because he had an amazing training program. And Brent comes in as his normal self, bull in the china shop, and super excited, pumped, always energized. He did a complete amazing training for my team. My business partner at the time was sitting in his office, and I came and said, hey, I want you to introduce him. This is Brent Gove. And Brent comes in all cheesy and happy. He's like, how you doing? He does a smile. It's real. My business partner's like, oh, God, it could be better. Life's all right. I swear to God, I've never seen anybody take a complete 180 and move out of the room in 2 seconds. He literally says, he didn't even finish shaking his hand. He's all right then. And he walked out. And that's Brent. Brent literally runs from negative energy, and it's true. So it's a true story about Brent. I love him for that. So I want to kind of give you guys a really quick idea of my story. This January was 21 years for me in this industry. And like everybody, I think we have some amazing stories in here of people who've been through ups and downs. I actually had my own mortgage company and real estate company in 2000. And then in 07, 08, and 09, same thing, everybody endured, right? The great debacle of the industry. So at that point, I took a kind of a setback because I was actually extremely depressed, like probably most people. I wanted to reevaluate my life and figure out what I wanted to do. And so at that point, I kind of pulled my shorts up and refigured what I wanted to do was obviously just straight real estate. So I plugged into real estate 100% at that point. And in 2011 or 12, I think it was, Keller Williams came and approached me and recruited me to be a team leader for their company. So I'm always that guy who pretty much jumps off the cliff first and sees how deep it is later. I really don't care. Honestly, I'm like, what do I got to lose? So I was actually working at a local real estate company. For those who might know, it's called Lion Real Estate Company. You guys might know him by the Michael Lyon guy. I'm sure I don't want to know about that. Anyhow, so I went from being an individual realtor to, I think at the time we had 126 agents in that office. It was extremely daunting, but of course I was always wanting to figure out and learn new ways and new things, and so I took it head on. For those who don't know, the life expectancy for a team leader at Keller Williams is about 18.5 months. That's with alcohol. I managed to last 3.5 years with alcohol. It's a crazy challenge. It's something that, honestly, at this point, you couldn't pay me $1 million to go back and do that job again. It's one of the most underrated, underappreciated, probably underpaid positions in that entire company. But I did learn a lot of stuff, and I managed to figure out a lot of new systems and things, which I really appreciated at Keller Williams because they had actually everything already in place. It was like putting me in a driver's seat. All the systems and models were designed. You were just the driver of it, which was amazing to me because even when I ran my first company, I had zero ideas of what I was doing. We were literally running by the seat of our pants. And pretty much we'd try something. If it didn't work, we lost a bunch of money. Oh, well, we'll try something else. But there at Keller Williams, I learned it actually more strategically and a lot more efficient to running a real estate company. So I appreciate that. But after that little debacle was done and realized one thing, one important role there is I had zero control of my future there. I was only as valuable until I wasn't. And the moment they thought there was a different approach or a different direction they wanted to go, if you didn't fit in it, you were going to be pushed aside. It is what it is. It's kind of business. So I got out of that, and I decided I was done with the franchise thing, but then I wasn't, because I'm a typical male, hard to learn lessons. And I was approached by the guy who owned the Tri-Valley franchises for Berkshire Hathaway in Terrell, which is called Intero. And he had a dying franchise in Rockland at the time. He says, hey, he pleaded with me, please, come give it a shot. I know you left KW. Give it a whirl, help us out, rebuild it. And I said, okay, but I'll give you 6 months. And whatever I put into it, I want back out. If it doesn't work, I want out. He says, fair enough. He says, I'll take anything at this point. Well, fast forward, the 6 months came, and really, as you can see, when Brent didn't even like the energy of the guy, we butted heads so bad, I was done. So I pretty much said I was done there and got out. And then at the time, a buddy of mine who actually owned his mortgage company at the same time I did back in early 2000 had progressively became a commercial real estate broker. He says, hey, just come with me. Stop all this madness. You do the residential side, I'll do the commercial. You can do whatever you want, carte blanche. Nobody tells you what to do. It's all yours. He said, I actually have some guys, some investors that'll give us $350,000 seed money to start. We had it all lined up. I thought the stars were aligned like, here, this is the way to go. Finally, nobody to answer to but myself. So I was totally open to it. But at the time, I started getting some really bad nightmares coming back to me again, where I thought about the days at Keller Williams where I had to do all the same things again, the training, the coaching, the babysitting. At this time, I'd have to do it all over again, but build it from scratch. I didn't have all the systems built in place. So I'd have to start doing all the systems, recruiting again, the babysitting. It was ridiculous. So I really decided I didn't know if I wanted to do it or not. So I had this coming to Jesus conversation. A lot of people talking about Jesus, and I did too. I said, you know what, God, if this is what you want me to do, I'm in it. But if it's not, I need a real answer. Not this like, send me a sign like, hey, this looks like what you should do. I need a real definitive, because that's the kind of person I am. Swear to God, 2 days later, Brent Gove calls me. And it was nuts. He literally calls me and says, hey. I said, what's up, Brent? He says, we got to have lunch. He says, I left Keller Williams. I'm like, there's no way in the world you left KW. He says, yeah. I'm like, all right, all in again. I'll jump off the cliff and see how deep it is later. So obviously, I was intrigued by that. We met for lunch, had a couple conversations, and at the time, it wasn't even, we didn't have the videos the model explained back then. Remember that, Brent? It was literally Rob Flick talking on a video. He was live chimed in. Rob Flick was doing the video. And so I was sitting in the Starbucks, we're sitting there, and Rob Flick's talking. I could barely hear, and all I can see is some of the screenshots. And the few that I saw, literally just done. I'm in. I literally told Brent, I'm in. And you know, he's right, it makes sense. If you understand the concept of business, if you run a business and understand like the P&Ls and the running of the business, you get EXP. I was literally about ready to spend $350,000, which, by the way, I knew I would be broke until I paid that off, right? In that model, I would have to pay off that $350 just to get that guy out of my pocket before I would start being profitable. And I thought about that at my 3-year mark, because now, let's see, that was 2016 he approached me. So we both were, as you notice in that list up here, I was number 6 that he had contacted. And so it's 5 years for us this year in 2021, 22. We're 22. I don't know what today is, COVID. So literally at this point, we're 5 years into this. So at the 3-year mark, I looked back and thought about what I would have done 3 years if I went like to the left, went that direction, opened up a spot in town, you know, had the ability to recruit right there locally within Roseville and Sacramento, which would have been great, but it would have been a lot more challenging. And I tell you what, at the 3-year mark, I would have not been where I was at in 3 years here at EXP than I would have been there. That's for sure. So fast forward here now at 5 years, my organization has grown to 782, but here's the thing. Here's the thing. The reason why I was a little reluctant to come up here is because I feel like I've really let myself down and some of the things that you do. So we've had a lot of amazing people up here speaking about all the things to do to get going on recruiting. What I want to talk about is things to keep sustainability in this, okay? The problem is, I just was talking to Fidel and them earlier, right? This is a marathon. But every time you talk to somebody, they see like the Brent Gove successes, they see all these other people's success stories in here, and they expect the sprint. I'm gonna have this in 6 months. We've literally recruited people back in the day. You remember the Natomas guys, Brent? I'm not gonna say their names, but we got them, and literally I think they were bought into the opportunity that they could have this organization in 6 months. Literally every 2 weeks they say, Why is my team not growing, Chris? I'm like, dude, how long did it take you to build your real estate business? You've been in the business for almost 10 years, and you think that happened overnight? But the reality is our expectations were construed a little bit, right? So we have to make sure we set those expectations correctly. So the marathon that we're in, and this is why I love this event. I want to say, first off, I remember the very first events you had in Arizona. These are the rooms you had. I remember the very beginning. There were like 50 people. And if anybody went to Texas, good God, 6,000. That was nuts. To watch the growth that's happened in this by doing this is amazing. So the bigger thing is to take a chapter out of the book that he's been doing. The playbook has been written. Everybody said it up here for the last 2 days, right? The playbooks have already been written. But most of us will take basic math and turn it into trigonometry. I don't know why we do that, but we do. The reality is, this is no different than our real estate business. And everybody in this room is a realtor. You guys have been slinging real estate from day one. And every one of you in this room has been recruiting from day one. You've just been recruiting a buyer and seller. Those didn't fall in your lap. You had to actively go out, pursue them, take the same energy, same time, the same systems, the same everything to go out and door knock, open house, cold call, circle prospect, right? I mean, somebody ever said, who likes to lead generate? Nobody does. That's the worst part of the business, but it's necessary. So understand, you're recruiting now, your dialogue's just different. It was no different than before, just now you were having conversations in people's living rooms, potential sellers, and you were telling them why you were the one that they should be signing to sell your home. That was the conversation you were having. Now it's a conversation with colleagues in the industry, by the way, who knows your business and you know their business, who know, likes, and trusts you. How much easier can that be? You know all the pains, all the situations they're going through, and all the challenges they're having, because you're having the same way, right? So you know how to speak to them. So the first thing I would say is, number one, just stop making this so difficult. But secondly, I want to kind of go back and talk about my life prior, because this is kind of segue into this real quick. I actually have been on my own since I was 15, and I worked, so I quit school to go to work full-time because I had to support myself. In doing so, I have probably the high school education of not so smart. Brent says you're a C average kid. I'm probably a D average kid. But I'm also a hustler. I'm persistent, and I never quit. So my point in saying that is that when you're at that stage in your life, everything was based off survival, okay? And survival, one of the main attributes I think of survival is scarcity. It comes from a place of scarcity, which also runs parallel to fear. Fear drives that. So as I've gotten more successful in this world, thanks God to EXP, you get to a point where all of a sudden the survival no longer exists. Survival mode's gone for me. I don't have to survive. I've exceeded that. So my new problem is I still work from a place of scarcity because the fear has just now changed and attached to something else. The fear goes to insecurities. We all have them. Everybody in this room sitting here has got some level of insecurity. I do, right? Why do we not want to make calls? Because we all hate rejection. Why is it hard for us to pick it up and make the phone call? Because we don't want to hear that on the other end slamming it. But you're right. I mean, you talk about Matthew, right? It doesn't matter what they think about us. It's none of our business. But that's easier said than done, right? It's true. It requires some programming and some training in your mind to get past that. So for me, I think this is the best way to learn is to teach, right? So I love coming up here and speaking only for the fact that I'm actually learning right now as I'm teaching you guys, because these are things that I need to be working on. I need to harness my fears and let some of those go because those insecurities that attach to it, and still, crazy enough, I'm still working from a level of scarcity, but from different, not from survival, but from fear. Fear from my insecurities I have internally. So what I wanted to speak to you guys about is that this is, again, the sustainability part of it is you have to continue on in this marathon. These events are priceless. And if you can't get your people to come to these events and yourself, that's where we've heard for the last 2 days, right? How important it is to do that. This is like the intermediate refilling charging station right here. Because you're starting to feel down, you're starting to feel heavy, and like the wind in your sail is falling away, these recharge you. You get to hear amazing things. I mean, you heard it from, Nicole did an amazing job on, you need to treat this thing as a business. Absolutely, number one, you treat this thing as a business. That was awesome, Nicole. Kevin Cottrell, appreciate it. How bad do you want it? Right? How bad do you want it? I mean, those things says it's kind of cliche, and it's like, oh, well, yeah, how bad do you want it? That goes back more to the why. We've talked about everything except the why. What is your why? Your driving force is always your why. And if you haven't got the driving force, maybe you need to relook and reconfigure your why. I had to. My first why was because it was a little sadistic, but it was mine. You know, I grew up with a father who basically was a 2x4, but he was always the person who kind of put you down, right? Like, you're not good enough, you won't amount to much, was pretty non-existent. So my entire life was driven based off the fact that I wanted to prove him wrong. It's crazy. And here's the irony of it all. I haven't talked to my dad in 35 years, but he's never seen anything I've done. So you sit back and wonder, well, why the hell did I do all that for? Well, you did it for yourself. But the truth is, now I have to readjust and change my why because that driving force is gone. For the fact that I realize that it doesn't make any difference to me anymore whether he sees it or not, I need to change my why. You know, and what does that look like? I don't know. That's for each and every one of you guys to dig into yourself and find out. Understand this. People always say, what's your why? Well, my family, my kids. I want to make sure they have a great life, which is awesome. I think that's kind of standard. Kind of goes without saying. But what is the emotional attachment to that? That's the most important part. The emotions make you act, logic makes you think. Why did they put you in a car, the car salesman? So you can feel the nice, supple leather, turn the engine on, feel it roar, tell you how awesome you look driving down the boulevard. Right? It's the emotional attachment to that makes you buy that car. The logics just tell you all the specifics. You really can go in one ear and out the other. You're not going to walk away buying that car. They know that. So where's the emotional attachment for you to continue to build this? Legacy, generational wealth, life-changing. We've heard it over and over and over again up here, right? Everybody's changed their life. It's changed my life. It's a double-edged sword, though. I'll say this. To the point where I'm too comfortable, and now I've become more complacent. So what I want to encourage you guys to do is never let off the gas pedal. It's never enough. And continue to always grow. I mean, Dave and I talked about it today. Brett talked about it again today, too. Always pushing forward. Never stop. This is never done. This is never done. There's never like, oh, we're going to get here and we're done. This is an ongoing, you can't see the end. It's a commitment to the end. There's nothing that you can just, right? Does that make sense? You guys understand that? So I want you guys to think from that mindset. There is no end game to this. You're going to continue on, and you're going to continue on, and you're going to continue on. And the results will vary. I remember when Brent and them had 100 people in the very beginning, and they were in that vault, in that room. I remember when he hit 300 people. James, the methodical guy, would always show me little spreadsheets. Hey, we're at 400 people. That was like, they were celebrating. And now he has 25,000 because he simply was just committed. And I tell him, he says, and I ask you, what is it driving force? He says, you know, well, for him it was fear. He was afraid of never being able to provide for his family. That was his thing, and he's always driven that way. You got to find out what makes you drive. Everybody has their own. I have my own. But what I really want you to take away today is that this is something that's never over. This is going to continue on forever and ever and ever. You just got to make sure you commit to a process, not the outcome. Okay? So I hope this was helpful. You guys just wanted to share a bit of my story. Thank you so much for all your help. Love you guys.